The rain poured hard against the glass windows of the sleek black SUV as it idled near a red light in the city's forgotten district. Inside, Aaron Malik, CEO of a billion-dollar tech company, barely looked up from his phone. His mind was occupied: numbers, deadlines, board meetings. Life had become nothing but strategies and spreadsheets. But then, through the fogged-up glass, a soft knock. Tap. 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 He glanced up, annoyed at the interruption. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8, soaked from head to toe, stood by his window. Her face was pale, her lips trembling. "Sir," her voice was barely audible over the rain, "please, can you help us?" Aaron hesitated. He normally would ignore this kind of thing. His assistant handled donations, his foundation funded shelters. But there was something about her eyes. They weren't just sad. They were scared. He cracked the window. "Where are your parents?" "She's in the trunk," the girl whispered. Her lips quivered. "Sir, she's too weak to beg." Aaron blinked, confused. "What?" Before he could ask again, the girl turned and ran toward the alley. Against his better judgment, Aaron threw the car into park and followed her, stepping out into the icy downpour. She led him to an abandoned parking lot where a rusted sedan sat under a crumbling roof. The girl pointed to the trunk. "Please don't be mad. I didn't know what else to do." He approached cautiously, heart pounding. The trunk was barely closed, just enough for air. When he lifted it, he gasped. Curled inside, emaciated and unconscious, was a woman, barely 30, it seemed. Her arms were wrapped around a torn jacket. Her face was gaunt, lips cracked. It was clear she hadn't eaten or slept properly in days. "That's my mom," the girl whispered behind him. "She fainted yesterday. We didn't have food again. She told me to go beg, but," she swallowed hard, "I tried. But no one listened." Aaron stood frozen. This wasn't a scam. This wasn't someone trying to play the system. This was real. 2 hours later. Inside the ER, the mother was being treated for severe malnutrition and dehydration. The little girl, her name was Layla, sat beside Aaron, clinging to a cup of hot chocolate the nurse had given her. "I tried to be brave," she said quietly. "She always says I'm the brave one. But I'm tired too, sir," her voice cracked. "I just wanted someone to see us." Aaron didn't speak for a moment. His throat was tight. "How long have you been living like that?" he asked. "Since the fire. My dad died last year. Mom lost her job soon after. Then, no rent. No house. People stopped answering her calls. She tried to sell her paintings but nobody bought them."
3 weeks had passed since Mark Delaney, still posing as Mike from Produce, sat in that break room with Jenna. But he hadn't forgotten a single word she said. Every night since then, he found himself thinking about her, the weight she carried, the silent strength in her voice, and the way she wiped her tears quickly, like she was used to hiding her pain. Mark had heard countless employee stories during his undercover assignment. Some were inspiring. Some were frustrating. But Jenna's? It haunted him. She wasn't just a worker in his company. She was a fighter, pushing through a storm she didn't cause, with nothing but love for her little brother and the desperate hope that someone would help. It was time. The finale taping, 1 week later. The studio lights were blinding. The crowd buzzed with excitement. This was the final episode of Undercover in Uniform, the hit show that took CEOs out of boardrooms and into the break rooms. But for Mark, this wasn't just a TV moment. This was personal. He adjusted his tie as he stood backstage, waiting to walk on. In the center of the stage sat Jenna, nervously fidgeting in a borrowed dress, looking entirely out of place among the cameras and polished producers. They had told her she was here for an employee appreciation spotlight, a recognition segment for hardworking new staff. She had no idea what was coming. A voice echoed across the room, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the CEO of Delaney Markets, Mark Delaney." Applause filled the air as Mark stepped into the lights. Jenna's eyes widened. Her jaw dropped slightly as she blinked, trying to process what she was seeing. "Wait, you're the guy from produce," she whispered, stunned. Mark smiled warmly. "Not exactly. I'm also the man who started Delaney Markets 25 years ago in a rented shop with one employee and a dream. And for the past few weeks, I've been walking the aisles in disguise, trying to understand what it really feels like to work in my company." He turned to her. "And I met you, Jenna." The crowd quieted. "I saw someone who's working 3 times as hard for half the reward. Someone showing up exhausted, scared, and heartbroken, but still managing to smile at strangers and take care of her little brother without ever asking for anything in return." Jenna looked like she might cry. Mark continued, his voice thick with emotion. "When you sat in that break room and shared your story, I was shaken. You shouldn't have to carry all of this at your age. And you certainly shouldn't be doing it alone." He paused, then reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. "This check," he said, holding it up, "will cover your brother's next 2 years of treatment, completely. No strings. No debt. It's already been arranged with the hospital." Jenna gasped, her hand flying to her mouth as tears began to fall freely. "And that's not all," Mark said, his voice growing steadier. "We're offering you a full scholarship to the local community college, any program you choose. And when you're ready, a guaranteed role on our corporate community outreach team. Because you don't just represent strength, you represent heart. And this company needs more of that." The audience erupted in applause. Jenna buried her face in her hands, sobbing, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had just happened. But Mark wasn't done. He turned to the camera, addressing the millions watching. "There are people like Jenna in every company, every city, every corner of this country. They show up. They work. They care. And too often, we miss their stories." He looked back at her, his voice now soft. "You reminded me of why I started this company, Jenna. It wasn't to make money. It was to make a difference. And today, you made one in me." Weeks later, Jenna stood outside her brother's hospital room, laughing as he played with a toy someone from Delaney Markets had dropped off. His cheeks were fuller now. His hair still thin, but his smile wide. She held a schedule in her hand, 2 morning college classes, 1 shift a week in the outreach office, and a paycheck that no longer came with panic. Life wasn't perfect. But it was possible now. And that made all the difference. Final message. Sometimes, we pass by the strongest people every day without ever noticing. They're behind counters, pushing carts, restocking shelves, carrying silent battles we never see. All it takes is one moment of compassion, one conversation, one act of belief, to change a life forever. Because leadership isn't about power, it's about people. And the strongest leaders are the ones who never forget that.